Hello friends, welcome to Salesforce Admin Series. Today's topic is change sets. So let's see what we are going to cover in this video today. First we will see what are the sandboxes in Salesforce, then how we can deploy the changes, uh, then what are the change sets, then there are some implementation tips. While you will implement the change set, you have to keep these tips in mind. Then there are two types of change sets, inbound change sets and outbound change sets. So let's start with sandboxes. So as you know, whenever we customize something, whenever we create something, whether it is a code or a configuration, it is best practice to do it in a separate environment other than your production environment. So ideally, you should have a development or test environment where you create things or where you modify different things, whether it is code or configuration, test it properly there, and then move it to the production. So those instances in Salesforce are called sandboxes. So separate environments for development, testing, and training without compromising the data and application of production org. So you should not do anything directly in the production org. You should have your development or testing environments, and there you should do all the changes, all the modification or any new creation, and test it thoroughly there and then move it into the production org. It isolates customizations and development work until it's ready for deployment. So once you're ready for the deployment, then only you should move it from sandbox to your production environment. So in Salesforce, we call these environments as sandboxes. So you have to go in the setup menu and you have to search for sandboxes, and from there you can create a new sandbox. So depending upon your usage, there are different types of sandboxes are available. So depending upon your usage, you can choose the sandboxes which fits your need. Test changes against copies of production data and users, and then you have the option like you can copy the data from the production org and you can test your changes on those copies of production data and the users. So what are the different types of sandboxes? The first one is the developer. So as the name suggests, it is basically used for development. So whenever you create a developer sandbox, it will not copy the data from production. It will just have the structure of the production org, but then there is some size limit in this developer sandbox. If you want more size, more space storage, then you should go for developer pro. So it is also similar to developer sandbox only. It will have all your data structure from production, but it will not have the original data. It will have like the configuration and whatever the metadata is there, different customization or configuration which you have already done in production. If you copy that, it will have all those changes, but then you will not have the original data. Then you have something called partial copy, where you can have like partial data also available from the production or a set of data, and then based on those data you can test your changes in the partial copy sandbox. Then you have something called full sandbox. So full sandbox, as the name suggests, is the exact copy of your production art. It is basically used for the load testing. So if you want to test like, okay, this particular changes, what it will result while in loading and all those performance kind of thing, then you will go for the full sandbox because it will have the same amount of data as in production org. So these are something very important. You should always have a sandbox ready for creating or modifying different changes and apply it in the, then after only apply it in the production org. So here you can see for the development and the test, you have developer sandbox. For your build and release, you have developer pro sandbox. For test and release, you have full sandbox. And then when you are releasing finally, so you will use the production sandbox. So now we'll see how we can deploy different changes. So Salesforce provides different tools to migrate the metadata changes. So whatever configuration you are doing, if you want to move it from one org to another org, so Salesforce provides different tools for that. And one of the tool is the change set. So change sets can be used to deploy workflow rules, Apex classes, and triggers, and other customizations from one org to another org. So there are many components available, many different types of components available, which can be used to deploy in the production. So it has like workflow rules you can deploy using change set, and the other customization, like you are creating any new fields, or if you have created any new page layouts, new reports or dashboards. So if you have done any changes in the existing one also, then all those things can be moved from one org to another org using change set. A deployment connection is required between two Salesforce orgs to send change sets from one org to another org. So there should be a deployment connection between the two orgs in which you want to transfer the data from one org to another. So there should be a deployment connection required. Each org must be authorized to send and receive change sets. And then whatever org you are using for sending and receiving change sets, it should be properly authorized. So it is not like that if you have like two separate orgs and if they are not connected with each other, you cannot transfer data in between them. It should be authorized from the suppose if you have one production org, so it should be authorized from there itself. Okay, this production org has like 2 or 3 different sandboxes, and all are having connection with each other and even with the production org. Then only you can transfer the data between all these orgs. If suppose there are 2 sandboxes but they are not connected to each other, they are just only connected to the production org, then you can only send data from production to the sandbox. Data, I mean the changes, the change sets you can send from production org to the sandbox or sandbox to the production. But if those 2 sandboxes are not connected with each other, then you cannot send the changes in between those 2 orgs. So this is the thing which needs to be taken care while deploying the changes. Now we will see what are change sets. So change sets used to send customization from one Salesforce org to another Salesforce org. So whatever customizations you have done, whether it is related to code or whether it is related to configurations, if you want to send it from one Salesforce org to another, you should use change sets. Change sets can contain only modification you can make through the setup menu. So whatever changes you are making using the setup menu, those configurations or those modifications can only be taken care by change sets. So if you're doing any changes related to the data, like if you want, if you have created some accounts records or some contact records, those record data cannot be sent through change sets. Only the things which you can do from the setup menu, from the gear option, you go ahead and click on processes or click on approvals, or have you created any email templates or reports or dashboards. Only those menus, only those features or those modifications you can send through change sets. So change sets contains information about the org. They don't contain the data. So whatever there is related to the organization, whatever changes you have done, whatever modification you have done, those will be taken care by change set, but then they don't contain the data. When sending customization from current org to another org, create an outbound change set. So when you are suppose you are logged into Sandbox 1 and you want to send data in Sandbox 2. So you're in the Sandbox 1, from where you want to send the data, you should create a outbound change set. And when in the receiving org, like in the Sandbox 2, you will see it as an inbound change set because it is incoming in the Sandbox 2. So it will be inbound change set. And from where it is going out, in from the Sandbox 1. So then from there it will be outbound change set. Change sets can only be sent between orgs that are affiliated with the production org. So as I said, if the production org should be same for all other different orgs, then only you can send data in between those. Otherwise, you cannot. The components available for a change set vary by experience and addition. So whatever components, whatever type of configuration or modifications you can send between different orgs using change set, it depends like what is the experience or what is the addition of the Salesforce. Like if it is a professional edition, then there are some set of components. If this is enterprise edition or any other kind of edition, then there'll be different set of components available. If there is any component that is not available in change set, it needs to be migrated manually. So if you have seen that, okay, this type of configuration or this type of modification is not possible to, is not present in the component list, then you have to migrate it manually. To deploy a private or a unified report using a change set, first copy or move the report to a different report folder. So this is something very specific to reports only. So if the report is there in a particular folder, like in a private or unified folder, then it will not be seen in the component list. So what you have to do, you have to go ahead and create a folder, a public folder or a particular folder where you will save that particular report which you want to send, and after saving it in that folder, it gets visible in the component list. Then custom tabs are hidden by default except in professional edition and in the component list. So when you are in the except in the professional edition and all other edition, the custom tabs are hidden. So you have to manually go ahead and make it visible. If you have used the change set to move it from one org to another org. In case of approval process, if any custom field is present on standard object, it needs to be manually added in outbound change set. So your whole approval process can be moved from one org to another org using change sets. But if there is any custom field you have created on a standard object, then it should be manually added into the outbound change set. Then only the whole process will get transfer from one org to another org. So these are something very specific to like reports or approval process or like custom tabs. But in general, like if you are creating any custom object or you are creating any other custom fields, you can directly transfer it from one org to another org using change sets. Then there are some implementation tips which you should take care. So authorization required to upload changes. So as I said, the sandbox environments should be authorized properly. Then only you can upload different changes. And then deployment connection list, display all connections. So once you have all the sandboxes and the production org and your change set ready, so you can go ahead and see what are the different deployment connections between different orgs. It's like the two-way connection or just a single way connection, or if there is no connection between two sandboxes, but then all the sandboxes will have connection with production, that is for sure. Then only you can transfer the data in between them. So those connections list will be displayed, and based on that you can start sending or receiving the change sets from one org to another org. Change set connections unavailable during maintenance. So if you suppose your production is under maintenance for some time, so that time you cannot use the change set connection because the main org, the production org is in the maintenance. Sandboxes must be available. So there should be a sandbox. Then only you will transfer data from one place to another place. If there'll be no sandbox, there'll be only production box, then there's no use of change sets basically. So you should have sandboxes for using change sets. Deployment doesn't restart automatically. So suppose if you have started a change set process, sending from one org to another org, but due to some error, it gets failed. So it doesn't restart automatically. What it will do, you have to go ahead and manually restart the process. Deployment is a one-way transaction. So whatever you are doing, whatever change sets deployment you are doing, that is a one-way transaction. Like it will in a single transaction, it will send the data from one org to another org. In the same transaction, you cannot have the data flow between both the orgs. It will be like a one-way transaction. And then deployments maintain user references. So whoever user is started the change, whether they have the proper access of those objects or not, and in the org also where it is going, who is the receiving user, does that user have the proper access or not. So those kind of preferences also be taken care when you are deploying the change sets. Change sets with many dependent components can take several minutes. So suppose if there are like many different dependent components, suppose you are transferring one custom object, but then that custom object is dependent on few other standard or custom objects, then all those dependency needs to be taken care when transferring through change set. And because there are so many dependency, it will take several minutes to process first all the dependency, then your final object. So that needs to be taken care. So these are some of the tips which you should take care while you are implementing change sets. Now, as I have told you that there are two types of change sets. One is the inbound change sets and other is the outbound change sets. So let's see what is the inbound change sets. An inbound change set is a change set that has been sent from another Salesforce org to the org you are logged into. So currently I'm in Sandbox 2 and I am getting the data from, I'm getting the change set from the Sandbox 1. But then for me, this Sandbox 2 is when the change set is coming, it will be like a inbound change set because it is incoming in Sandbox 2. So that would be our inbound change sets. A change set must be deployed for the changes to take effect. So once you get the change set, you have to click on deploy. Then only it will be deployed in your current org, and then only your changes will be seen on the organization for real. Like you have received the change set, but then you have to deploy also. Deploy the contents of an inbound change set as a whole, but not on a component by component basis. So you have to deploy the whole inbound change set. So whatever components are there in that, it will be deployed in a one go. It's not like you will deploy one object, then you will deploy one field, then you deploy one report. No. So whatever change set has contained in it, it will be deployed in one go. A change set can be validated without deploying the changes. So you have an option, you can validate a change set. Before deploying it, what you can do, there's an option of validation. You can validate if all the things are proper or not, and if there'll be any discrepancy or if there'll be any error. So while validation, you will get that error. A change set is deployed in single transaction. So as I said, you have to deploy it in a single go. It's not like you can do it by component basis. Deployments can be monitored using deployment status page. So there is something called deployment status option, and from there you can monitor your deployments, like what is the current situation, whether it is in progress or whether it is completed. So all those information you can monitor through the deployment status page. And change sets becomes unavailable when, if the changes set expired. So if it gets expired after some time, then you will not be able to access that particular change set. If the change set is deleted, if it is deleted, obviously you will not be able to access it. And after the change set is deployed, and once you deployed it, the change set is gone because it is already deployed. So you cannot just roll back it gets deployed, so it is gone. So these are the times when your change sets becomes unavailable. Similar to inbound, there's a outbound change sets. So now I'm in sandbox 1. So whatever change sets I'm preparing and I want to send it to the other, or to the any sandbox 2 org or the production org, then whatever change set I'm doing in sandbox 1, that will be my outbound change set, because an outbound change set is a change set created in the Salesforce org in which you are logged in, and that you want to send to another org. So now I want to send it to the sandbox 2, but I'm in sandbox 1, so my change set will be outbound because I want to use it for the outgoing. So that's how the name comes. Use an outbound change set for customizations created and tested in a sandbox, and that are then sent to a production org. So when you are fine, you have created the customizations, you have tested in a particular sandbox. Now you can use the outbound change set and then send all those modification or all those customization to the production or any other sandbox as well. The change set must be deployed by the target org before the changes can take effect. So as we have learned, you have to deploy it. So once the target org receive your change set, they have to deploy it. After upload, change set status become closed. So once you upload it from sandbox 1 to the production or sandbox 2, its status will become closed because now it is already uploaded in the another org. So in this org, in my current org or in my sandbox 1, the status will become closed. Make sure to add dependent components to a change set if they are already not present in the target org. Suppose if you have a dependent pick list kind of thing. So if your controlling pick list is not in the production org, and if you want to transfer only dependent pick list to change set, so it will not work because the dependency was not already there in the production org. So make sure you check that if it is not there in the production org, you add that particular dependent components in the change set itself and then transfer it as a whole component. Once upload, it can't be edited or recalled. So once you have sent the outbound change set, once you have uploaded it, you cannot edit it and even you cannot recall it. What you can do, you can only clone it again. A copy can be created by cloning the change set, and then whatever modification you want to do it in there, and then again upload it, and then in the inbound change set you have to again deploy that one. So you cannot just, like, if something is missed or something happened after you realize, once you upload it, you cannot edit or recall it. So these are the few things related to change sets. What I cannot do at this moment is I cannot show you how you can create these things, because in the developer edition you don't have an option of sandbox and making change sets because it's a developer org. But when you are working in a proper environment where you have production environment, then you have different sandboxes, then there you can see how these change sets work. And it is like a very convenient method to transfer your changes from one org to other org. And when you are doing any modifications or trying to create new things, you should always do it first in the sandbox, then only move it into the production after thoroughly and properly you have tested those changes, then only move it into the production org. So yeah, this is all for this session. Thank you all for joining me in this session. Thank you.